batch. Currently, he is pursuing his MS in Applied Data Science at University of Southern California, Los Angeles, USA. Also, he is being an AI intern, Research and Early Development at Genentech Roche Group at South San Francisco, USA. There, he built an information retrieval engine using deep passage retrieval, semantic search, and a question answering engine using the pre-trained BioBert model in PyTorch to construct an AI assistant to aid clinical trials using drug administration protocols. Also, he has been graduate researcher data science at USC Kenneth Norris Comprehensive Cancer Center from August 2019 to April 2020 at Los Angeles. Apart from this, he has done so many projects. Some of them are banknote authentication using semi-supervised learning and active learning, hybrid recommendation system for predicting health user preferences, and so on. Also, he has a quite good publications in reputed journals so far. With that, I just hand over the session to Mr. Vignesh Prabhakar. Thank you.
Thank you, Vignesh, for joining us.
Thank you, ma'am. Hello, everyone. So it's first of all, thank you very much for having me here, and it's really a pleasure interacting with everyone, and discuss with everyone about a specific topic of interest over here, and so great being here. And I would like to start out with saying just something like I'm pretty sure today in the kind of environment and civilization we are in right now, one of the major things which we can see all around us is actually the healthcare industry and the biotech industry, because I'm pretty sure one question which all of us have in our minds are, when will the vaccine for COVID-19 come? And being in the field of computer science, being computer scientists, and the field of artificial intelligence, it kind of becomes important as how in what ways could we contribute in order to make sure we have a positive impact on the current civilization, or what we could do in terms of creating a positive impact on society based on what we have acquired, what knowledge we have acquired over all these years. So with that, I would like to quickly move on to the topic to just kind of give you a brief idea about how AI and NLP are being used in the biotech industry for vaccine production, diagnosis of cancer and tumor segmentation, and several other such interesting problem statements, so that it could invoke a positive research mindset in all of you, and you could pursue similar avenues of study which you could pursue going forward. So let me just quickly share my screen. I have a presentation. So this is what I have. So I'm just going to discuss about the role artificial intelligence and natural language processing are playing in the biotech industry today, especially in the production and distribution of the vaccines, how they are being used for diagnosis of diseases, and how exactly they are aiding these clinical trials in different phases of clinical trials, so as to augment the pace of production of a vaccine or the cure for a particular disease, which would have taken several years otherwise. So to just get started about me, my name is Vignesh. I pursued my undergraduate BTech in Computer Science and Engineering from SRM from the 2015 to 2019 batch. So currently, I'm an artificial intelligence intern in the R&D division of Genentech. They're one of the major biotech companies in the world right now. And one of their vaccine is already in the phase 3 of clinical trial called Covacta. And in addition to this, I'm also currently pursuing a master's in applied data science at University of Southern California, where I have one more semester for graduation. And I'm also research assistant in the USC Radiomics Laboratory of the Keck School of Medicine, where I perform research on specific to cancer radiology and application of AI in this particular domain. So just quickly summarizing what our value proposition over here is going to be is to leverage AI to kind of support this clinical trials for fast tracking the pace of vaccine production, and to effectively diagnose, to kind of have a better diagnosis for several diseases, including cancers, from medical images, which is called as medical imaging problem statement in deep learning and AI. So what we have is, like some of the few indispensable applications which we'll discuss are, and what the use case would be like. The current pain points are that, we want to have the vaccine at a quick pace, but how can a vaccine come at a quick pace when the technology doesn't support these particular resources? And AI actually is in the center of all of this right now, and is actually being utilized to fast track the pace of the vaccine production right now. In addition to this, AI is also being utilized in the biotech industry currently to augment the diagnosis of cancer through medical imaging of MRIs, mammograms, X-rays, and all the other scans which are possible. One thing, one opportunity which people can focus on going forward be like to build in building and productionizing AI models at scale, so as to revolutionize the process of drug discovery and diagnosis of diseases from medical images. Even though there could be, like all this magnetic resonance imaging and all these things industry which can, correctly identify these tumor cells from the scans, it's still many of times, even in the earlier phases, it's difficult to identify these diseases. So going at a very specific feature level, it's highly likely that an AI model is able to detect some complex combination of features which could be utilized to improve the diagnosis procedure, which is even beyond what a clinician could do in such scenarios. And some of the areas of focus which we'll be discussing today are, I've chosen three specific topics which are kind of very hot areas of research in the biotech industry specific to the AI domain. One is the drug discovery of for cancer through neoantigen sequence representation by NLP models. The drug discovery process is similar for the COVID-19 vaccine as well, because the core idea behind how these problems are solved are essentially the same. And the other two which I'll be discussing are, one with the risk stratification of tumors from MRI images by convolutional neural networks, and the last would be kind of like a QA engine for querying scientific literature and clinical documents. The last one is a pretty common one. I mean, if people are familiar with using platforms like Kaggle, they might have seen quite a few implementations of the third example which I discussed over here. So let's get started. And coming to the first topic which we're about to discuss, drug discovery. So I've taken a specific example over here. I've considered neoantigen representation and detection of cancer cells, and how exactly therapy could be offered for that. The particular mechanism of how this works is similar for COVID-19 as well. So just to give like an overview, I won't bore out the biology part because I'm a computer science candidate, but mostly, yeah. But also, it's important to have like subject knowledge as well if one wants to like better apply AI for a particular problem statement. So just to give you an overview, there is a particular type of T cell which plays a crucial role in examining the surface of our normal cells in our organs to identify if somewhere some tissue is having some cancer cells in it, some malignancy, something of that form. So the way this is done is there is something called as these peptide sequences on these cells, which are essentially a long chain of proteins. So if there is some form of mismatch observed in these peptide sequences, then if, let's say, this particular MHC complex is not able to identify a particular peptide sequence, then it is highly likely that that particular mismatch has been generated by a cancerous presence in the cells. And it's important in that case for our body to trigger an immune response in order to like identify this mismatch in the peptide pattern, and then be able to identify that it's a cancerous cell. And once that identification is done, we could perform something called as targeted drug delivery to this particular target sites, through which we could analyze and build drugs to essentially attack these particular target sites and go for a cure. So the way this is done is, this is the background of it, and the way this is done is, it's done through natural language processing. So I'm pretty sure people might, a very famous thing in natural language in AI is essentially natural language processing. And one of the state-of-the-art models in natural language processing is BERT, which is essentially a bidirectional transformer. And the way this works is, a simple, to give you an overview of this and to kind of translate it to what we want to do is, this right in front of you. So this BERT model is trained on entire data of Wikipedia. Whenever you have like a huge Wikipedia data, like it's been trained on the entire data, Wikipedia data, and so what it does is like it kind of predicts these tokens in a particular sequence. Um, because it was trained on complete sequences or sentences which it can complete based on what it learned from Wikipedia. So, for example, let's consider this example over here that no, penguin is a flightless bird. Suppose the natural language model has come across this particular statement. Uh, then the way this is trained is, there's like one particular word in the sentence which is kept hidden, and then that particular word is predicted when over like when a lot of examples are given to our natural language model. So this is how it is trained. It's trained on a massive amount of data available on the internet, such that you give it literally any particular sentence one might find on the internet, and the model will be able to complete that sentence by predicting this particular placeholder called mask. So this particular thing can be translated for usage into drug discovery. And the way this is done is, first thing to notice to know is that this is something we call as pre-training in AI. So pre-training models are already trained by these big companies like Google, Facebook, and all of this, and the checkpoints are essentially saved, which could be utilized downstream for performing any form of inferencing task, like let's say complete a sentence or answer a particular question or summarize a particular paragraph, something which is which only a human level intelligence could accomplish. So similar to this, there is another model which, instead of being trained on Wikipedia data, which is like let's say English language or the language in which Wikipedia is in, we train it in the language of proteins. So what happens here is we have long protein sequences. Instead of having you know the words in a sentence, we will have protein sequences over here, and in that particular thing, in this peptide sequences, we will mask few specific sections in this entire peptide sequence, which will be which will be predicted by the model. So this kind of mask prediction has been has been the way to train such a model, and is called as a tape model. So it comes under the masked language modeling category, where it's model basically predicts a particular section from the entire sequence, and once it's able to do that, it will be able to like replicate this particular sequence, and then thereafter it can compare it using what the original sequence for this is supposed to be. So, for example, that this is how it is trained, and then how this could be used is, once we train the model, we just kind of checkpoint the model weights, we store the model separately, and then we combine it with what the sequence in a non-cancerous cell should essentially be, which is termed here as the MHC. If you have a bio background, then you might have heard about major histocompatibility complex. But anyway, basically, it's, let's say we have a test, and there is a particular way to identify that this is supposed to be the original answer or something, when you're going for an OMR exam or something of that sort. And this is this peptide is essentially the original protein sequence which is present in the cells. So when these things are combined, the model especially kind of pays attention to the sequence in the MHC and sees if it is able to build the same sequence from this peptide chain over here. And if it is able to do that, then yes, the person does not have cancer. But if it is not able to do that, if it finds some different pattern which it is not able to rebuild, then it means that the person, there's a good chance that the person has some cancer development in his cells. So this that was one of the use cases. Now the other use case is something which me and my team back in our research lab have actually sent over and has been accepted for publication in Radiological Society of North America 2020. And the second application is about medical imaging, and we did this specific to prostate cancer. So what happens here is, generally when you go to this hospital, we take scan of let's say an X-ray or a mammogram in case people want to check for breast cancer or any other form of cancer. So we took MRI images of prostate cancer. So in this, there are generally two types of images. One is called T2, other is called ADC. Just for giving an overview of what it is like, and they are obtained by like very high precision tools, which cost like millions of dollars. And what happens there is like, we have to generally these are real patient data, so they're kind of anonymized and then they are given to us for analysis to see if the tumors present in these particular cells are essentially they are aggressive or they are not aggressive, to know if a particular tumor needs to be treated or it doesn't need to be treated, or essentially classification of these particular tumors, to understand if they need some special imaging tools. So one thing is, how it helps the radiologist is that it aids the radiologist to adopt like selective radiation therapies subject to those particular region of tumors, which could pose a high risk to the subject. And how we do this is through another pre-trained architecture, a variant of something we call as a convolution neural network. So, as you can see, the input to this particular sequence over here, we have a huge MRI of a prostate gland over here. And in the output, you see, we just have a particular white region in amidst all this shadowy black region. So this is essentially the exact dimension and this orientation of the tumor in this thing the in the prostate gland. So the way this works is, in general, a convolution network has all this it has this convolution layers to like propagate features, to perform feature propagation through the layers, and to identify these complex combination of features wherein to go down to at a very pixel by pixel level to identify if even a small variation in the pixel could essentially identify if a particular, let's say, region has any difference in the intensities of the pixel, etc. So what this does is, it also has some layers to kind of vary the dimension of these pixels, and those are called pooling layers, but they aren't always exactly good because they cause some amount of information loss when we want to let's say extract features from these MRI images. So what happens there is, so we go ahead and we replace these pooling layers, and we are upon replacing these pooling layers with with the modified architecture, we are able to propagate more precise segmentations throughout. And since these tumors are essentially at a very micropixel level, and it's not exactly identifiable from the human eyes, what we have is, we just go through these the model goes through these images, and uh, the propagation of these pixels layer by layer as we go forward doesn't cause any information loss, because you essentially removed the pooling layers with what we want, not to like propagate high resolution images going forward. So since you are able to modify this fully connected convolution layer, its architecture is like extended to also incorporate like fewer training images, because we're able to take this going forward. One major problem in the in all this diagnosis of cancer from these images is that there isn't a lot of data available out there. So there could be some patients with a particular type of cancer, and the other patient might have a different kind of a cancer altogether. So essentially, it is pretty important to make sure these things work with substantially, like smaller amount of training data available, which is the bigger challenge. So essentially, we have this central repository called National Institute of Health Sciences, NIH, which essentially have all of these data collected from beginning of time, anonymized from each user to make sure they are not identifiable to a particular individual. They are collected, and then these huge AI models are pre-trained on them, so they already know which kind of feature at let's say pixel by pixel level which will correspond to which type of malignancy existing in a particular cancerous cell. And when this happens and the feature propagation is done, we essentially have this output map over here, which you can see on the final layer, which we get from this modified architecture. So this is the segmented tumor. So from the entire scan, we have exactly narrowed down to the region of tumor. And once we give this particular segmented this thing mask to the radiologist, they will know which particular portion of the cells have to be subject to radiation therapy, so that they could effectively cure these tumors. And it also suggests if they have to go for something as expensive as radiation therapy, because some tumors may not necessarily be aggressive, so that may not cause harm to a person. So this is what we have in terms of prostate imaging, and this is the kind of like the results we have. So what we have above is something we call as a ground truth, and what we have below is what is achieved by UNet convolutional neural network model, which is pre-trained on like imaging data. So what happens here is, as you can see, the actual region segmented by the radiologist was this in this particular prostate gland, and in the second prostate gland is this particular colored region, and in the third it's that. And the exact attention mask which has been like applied, the map which has been applied over these MPMRI images have been more or less exactly the same in terms of dimension, in terms of let's say the shape and orientation of these cancerous cells, etc. So this is another use case, which we have actively worked on, and more research is actually currently going on to scale it up to identify when there are like multiple tumors present on in a single region, and whether all of them are aggressive or not, and all of that. So there's still further research going on this, and this was a second use case. And the third use case is a pretty popular one, which I'm pretty sure many would have come across, especially during this time of the pandemic. The reason why I would have come across this particular use case is because it's out there everywhere, because people are just they're having this scientific literature documents, research papers, PubMed abstracts, and all these things, which have information specific to the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is otherwise the cause for COVID-19. And what happens is the scientists know that to perform these clinical trials, they'll have to go through this huge amount of documents which have information about how the trial is supposed to be conducted, who are the type of the patients who are supposed to be included for these trials, who are the type of the subjects who are not supposed to be included for these trials, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of plethora of information out there which people have to like assemble from a structured format, bring it all to one place, make sure they only take in the relevant content needed for producing the vaccine, and so on and so forth. So it's a pretty tedious task, when we think about, let's say, millions of documents out there, and we have to like when we ask a random question which needs to be answered from those set of documents. So what happens is, we have this we kind of having this highly unstructured and difficult to aggregate documents, and we want to perform like real-time inferencing with these documents. Basically, when a clinical scientist is performing a clinical study for producing a vaccine, and they have a particular question that they want to like refer from this data, then our model should be trained on this particular data such that it is able to query all of this information, produce hidden representations of these informations in the form of word or sentence embeddings, and then fetch the corresponding page or paragraph which is relevant to a particular question which a particular scientist asks. So we have these, this is something which I've been working on currently, and as well. But yeah, we have these AI. So it's essentially building an AI assistant, like how we have with our Google Assistant or Alexa. But this is specific to the biomedical domain and the literature analysis when we want to perform clinical studies. So we want to like find out the answers in real time from these clinical documents. I want to incorporate these medical ontologies, hierarchical categorization of diseases and drugs, so as to know that for a particular condition, there could be a bunch of drugs which could be utilized for treatment of a specific condition, and so on and so forth. So This last specific point is, centric to something we call as knowledge graphs, where we represent all of these, categorizations and ontologies in form of a huge graph or a tree. If people have taken data structures here, they would be familiar with what a graph or tree is. And once that is done, we would be able to like traverse this particular graph or tree and identify if a particular you know drug could be utilized for multiple diseases which could come under the same hierarchical categorization. For example, there have been cases in COVID-19 where a particular drug which has been effective for pneumonia has been effective in some patients for treatment of COVID-19 and reduction of the symptoms. So this helps us to like essentially identify these particular combinations so as to give the scientists an idea as to where to start the clinical trials from and what drugs to be subject to clinical trials and all of that. So the architecture we have for this is kind of simple. We have a lot of documents, which is like the huge corpus we have over here. We want to retrieve those specific documents which which talks about a specific condition. For example, we have a lot of documents which talk about a lot of associated diseases. Could be pneumonia, could be tuberculosis, could be common cold, and then there's like few which talks about coronavirus. And we want to retrieve those specific documents which talk about the query which we have, and from those documents we want to retrieve specific we want to go down to a further molecular level, wherein we want to retrieve passages or pages which could answer a particular query. So typically this form retrieval is done through there are quite a few ways of doing that. It could be done through something called as a TF-IDF of retrieval, which is inbuilt with a BM25 algorithm incorporated in an Elasticsearch engine. So what this does is it sees the frequency of occurrence of a particular term in our input question in these sort of documents, and if we have a pretty high value of our TF-IDF score, which then we would be able to like retrieve that particular document which talks about particular disease condition. Or we could use another AI model to perform this retrieval, wherein we make our AI model go through all of these. Let's say we have a natural language model which goes through all of these documents, and then it stores this information in the form of vectors and embedding. So there's a way of representing uh, individual words and sentences in the form of vectors, so as to be able to quickly perform operations on these vectors, such as finding how similar one vector is to another vector, which means how similar one sentence is to another sentence, how different they are, how they could be utilized to perform a particular sentence completion, or any of these natural language tasks which we might have. And once this particular retrieval is done and we have the relevant document which talks about a specific question we had, we subject it to a document reader, which is actually a question answering engine. It's typically a natural language model. Now, there are quite a few models out there. If people here are active on LinkedIn, you might have recently come across this amazing model called as GPT-3, which is basically trained on the entire data of the internet. It's a very huge model, and it's known to have some capabilities which even a normal human might not be having. So it's the first step in one of the crazy applications of AI which we have out here. So this could be any of the models. It could be an earlier variant of the GPT-3 model, which could be a GPT-2, because GPT-3 is not open sourced yet. It could be a BERT model, which I showed earlier for drug discovery, for the peptide chain matching and the sequence comparison. Or it could be any other natural language model which is able to like go through these documents, identify a particular sequence among that entire page, which answers a particular question specifically and is pointed out as this answer. So it's essentially a token classification task at the core of it, wherein a few bunch of tokens are given to it, and you look at it and you are like, can this particular token answer a particular question? Does it anyway be relevant to a particular question which a user has asked? And if that's the case, then we would be essentially classifying this token as having being the start sequence for an answer, and will be classifying another token as the end sequence for an answer, and then all the other tokens which occur in the middle of these two words would essentially will form the entire sentence. So this is how, from that huge cluster of documents, you could pick out that one particular line which will answer the question of a user. So this is another great application which we're having in supporting clinical studies, because typically compiling these documents, making sure that all the necessary information is collected from it, to identify what kind of drug to be sent to clinical trial for to see if it could be potentially used as a molecule to for the vaccine production, and so on and so forth. It's a tedious process because it takes quite a long time, and it requires a lot of manual effort and mechanical torque. So all of this is resolved by AI models. So the process which could have taken a few months otherwise would have been reduced to a few weeks. And the drug discovery process, which I showcased earlier, that's sometimes even as long as a few years or a few decades, I would say. But identifying the particular sequence where we have a particular mismatch in that peptide chain, as I spoke about earlier, will help the scientists to kind of target that particular site where they have to send an immunogenicity response associated with a particular drug, so that the condition is cleared, and the virus or whatever microorganism which has replicated itself over there could be eradicated. So these are the kind of few of the common applications we have, and something specific to this particular NLP model which I had used over here is same as what I had discussed earlier. So it's essentially a BERT model, but then instead of training the BERT model on, again, Wikipedia data, we trained it on bio research papers, which are collected in NIH, PMC, and PubMed abstracts. So there are these lot of research papers in the bio industry which have been put out by people in the biomedical and the medical industries, and all of these have been compiled, and a natural language model has been trained on this huge amount of this huge corpus. It's the same BERT model I told about earlier, and the architecture is the same. So just mask token prediction one after the other. And in this case, again, we will just send the particular page which has the answers to a particular question, and the question as such appended to the end of the page. And it is able to apply a particular attention mask on these sequence of our question, and effectively figure out what particular sentence in the entire page closely matches the answer for our particular question. And this is entirely how intelligent natural language model has been trained, pre-trained, as then used for downstream tasks such as question answering or natural language inferencing, passage completion. It's an ocean. Basically, whatever human can do, there's models out there currently which can do it much better. This includes scoring better on a SAT test. So in back here in the United States, we have the graduate admissions is done through something called as an SAT test. And recently, the model which we have trained, which has been trained over here, called the GPT-3, which I mentioned about earlier. It's known to perform better than a lot of average applicants who take up the SAT test. And to know that the model has been trained on just all the SAT question answers which are available online, and all these mock test websites and all of that, that's pretty crazy, because it's performing much better than a human who has been let's say taking up formal education for better part of their lives. So these are some of the advancements we have presently in this particular industry. And I showed you 3 of the common applications. The reason I picked out these 3 applications were that drug discovery is essential to development of the vaccine, to understand what the target site has to be attacked. Where, let's say, COVID-19 molecules are having a particular target site in the entire sequence of cells we have, then it's important for the success of a vaccine here will depend on several factors. But the most important one of that would be to make sure that the vaccine is specific in terms of where the antigen attacks the particular target site, and also to make sure that it does not, attack any other sequence and cause any potential, side effects which are unprecedented. And so a lot of vaccines have gone to the phase 3 trials right now, which have utilized, drug discovery and natural language processing in order to like replicate those sequences. um, we've also had this, diagnosis of cancer is a crucial problem which people are facing all around the world right now. So that is another thing which was another major, biotech problem statement, which we discussed right now. And finally, like the last one was like as generic as we could get. Just we have a huge amount of documents. We narrow our search down to a specific document. It's essentially like a search engine, which we have online. But then this time the search engine is specific to a particular subdomain which we are interested in. So these are some of the ways clinical studies are currently being fast-tracked, being augmented to make sure the vaccine comes out at a much quicker pace, to make sure that the diagnosis of diseases are done at a much quicker pace, and to make sure that uh, you know the treatment could be offered in a timely fashion to the patients who get enrolled and seek these treatment procedures. Last but not the least, I understand I'm talking, communicating with a lot of my juniors over here. I know a lot of what I discussed would have been pretty much, you know, uh, it's more like an overview, but also just mentioning, what kind of problem statement in the biotech industry is a particular artificial intelligence approach, adopted and applied. So I also understand that, like there could be a lot of people watching this video right now who need to understand how to go about getting started with deep learning and machine learning and AI. I think it would the numbers would definitely be lesser because I'm pretty sure the AI boom has reached India as well, and all of everyone is pretty enthusiastic about getting to work with machine learning and deep learning and natural language processing. But to the ones you know who are having a trouble following or hearing these terms for the first time, this particular field which we are discussing over here is centric to uh, where the particular human civilization is going. We might be looking at some a particular technology which might actually be better in performing some tasks than what a human could potentially perform, even upon being specifically well trained in that. So and this has a lot of applications. The ones which specifically fascinate me are in education, in healthcare and biotechnology, and in defense. So the applications are massive out there, and potentially more people working on these particular technologies and gaining experience with this would essentially help in a country to get a lot of motivated AI scientists who could thereafter contribute to the research and development of AI in India. So yeah, here are some resources for you from where you could get started if you're just getting started with deep learning and AI. Um, all AI and deep learning is all sounds pretty fancy to everyone out there, but one thing very specific is it's at the core of all of it. It's just math. So being really good at linear algebra, 3D calculus, statistics and probability, graph theory. I'm sure all of these courseworks are offered at SRM over different spans of time. I'm pretty sure you have your maths paper 1, paper 2, and all of these things over the 6 semesters. All I can say is give your very best in these courses because they are the core of understanding how deep learning and all these neural network algorithms work. uh, so it's important to start from the basics and get the basics right. And once you master let's say all the mathematical concepts, then you could get started with machine learning and deep learning and getting introduced to that. So I recommend this particular deep learning.ai MOOCs course on Coursera. It's pretty famous course taught by Dr. Andrew Ng. And there's another famous some more reading resources out here. Also, since if you're going to be getting into AI, you would have to master your command or programming language. So pretty much, if you're well versed with Python, and if you're able to utilize Python with all these deep learning libraries like TensorFlow and PyTorch and Keras, then as you work more with that, you'll understand the documentation and how you're supposed to work with that. And most important of all of these things is a point I've kept at the last, which is self-reading and self-learning. A person can definitely be pushed up to a particular point of where they could be taught these concepts, taught all this math behind this particular concept and all of that. But to keep up with the pace of the industry and all the innovations which are potentially coming out there, it's important to go around. If you're motivated about AI or any field in general, it's important to go around and read these particular articles which come up on these particular websites, such as archive.org. So if anyone who's familiar with this is a website which publishes a lot of research papers in computer science from some of the top universities out there. And it's been integrated with something called as Papers with Code recently. So you will be reading some cutting edge technology which has been implemented in theory, and there would be motivated individuals out there who would have already implemented the code for that particular concept which has been presented as a proof of concept in the research paper. So once you go ahead with that, and then you start this whole pattern of iterative learning and implementation of these things, there is a lot of data out there, a lot of open source data on Kaggle, on a lot of resources on the internet. Just take a simple problem statement which you might be able to see around you in your everyday life. See if you can automate that particular problem with the data available in that particular domain, and all of these subject knowledge which you'll gain. And if you're able to do that, then well, that essentially would be pretty much revolutionary in terms of creating like a AI revolution back there in India. And last but not the least, I would like to thank everyone who has been part of giving me this opportunity to come and interact with all of you over here. So I'd like to thank Womal ma'am, Anupuni ma'am, Jyotikma sir, and Lavanya ma'am for conducting this particular alumni talk series, and giving me the opportunity to come and present some areas of research in artificial intelligence and deep learning to all of you. And yep, you could reach out to me with more questions on my social media handles anytime, whether it is anything regarding AI or uh, anything in general about you want to know something about pursuing any research project or masters in a particular university in the United States or something. I could pretty much be open to guide all of you and take you through the process. So thank you everyone, and with that, it's back to the host. Ma'am, you're currently on mute.
Thank you, Vignesh, for a wonderful talk given by you. It was so interesting to know the relation between the AI and ML in the field of biotech. It's very interesting, and I think it is a very good opportunity for our students to mingle with other departments and come up with a new kind of projects in the future. Thank you for your talk. One question from my side, can you suggest how when our students can start their work, especially in AI, because they are learning this subject and somewhere in the higher semesters? Is it possible for them to start uh, collaborating with other departments like biotech at that stage? Can you suggest, give some ideas for them? Also, apart from academics, how they can learn AI?
Yeah, so as I had presented in my last slide, I would say that before people jump onto AI, because AI is a pretty hot topic out there and everyone wants to do AI these days. But before people get onto a particular, let's say, we want to drive a particular Ferrari or Lamborghini. We want to be able to get to know of the command of the particular controls first, right? So it's essentially the same as that. I would say during the first year or the second year, students should specifically focus on getting the mathematics right over here, which includes, I know a lot of them neglect mathematics. Personally thinking that I know it's just a particular course which is something to be done as a part of BTech and so on and so forth. But it is one of the most important courses out there. The 6 semesters of math we have at SRM. I would ask all the juniors to like essentially focus on that first, get a good command on math, and then at the same time improve the programming skills gradually. If you don't have good programming skills already, um, you know they have to do a lot of programming with Python, these libraries, get a good command of data structures and algorithms. And this entire process typically takes around 2 years, if people start with that. And then once that happens, that would be the probably, I would say, somewhere around the end of second year to beginning of third year would be a good time to introduce the students to an AI related course. Could be machine learning, deep learning, natural language processing, or any other AI related course. And uh, once formally a course is delivered to them, it's all about solving more problems, going to all that open source repositories out there in Kaggle, UCI repository, and all of that, and just take up those problem statements. It is also important to have a research oriented mindset, as I told earlier, if one wants to excel in this particular domain. And collaboration with I know SRM has a wide range of departments with a lot of research going on in the specific departments. So there could be a lot of collaborations which are done between computer science and engineering and biomedical departments, and with every other department where there is a potential application for artificial intelligence. So once they do that, then typically somewhere in third year they start with a research project, work on the project for around a year or more than that. And then effectively the end of that should be, by the time they graduate, they're having about a publication or two in good academic journals. So this essentially should be the pipeline, which should be followed, from speaking from my personal experience.
Thank you, Vignesh. Last question, only one doubt. Is it possible for our students in second year or in third year itself to join with some external projects, with some foreign researchers to work under them? Is there any possible for to get collaboration with them and to learn something by helping them in their project? Also, our students can learn. So this way of possibilities are there.
Yes, it is there. Actually, I think the International Office of International Relations in SRM, I think they kind of send the students to do semester abroad programs, but then it doesn't happen as a collaboration between the universities, but more like it's a particular individual student goes to do a semester abroad program, works on these research projects back there in the labs of MIT and all of these universities, and thereafter they seek experience from there and they come back. The problem with such a thing would be making sure such a program is affordable to pretty much everyone. So what happens in such a scenario is making such a resource available to everyone is pretty crucial. So one important thing which I would like to say here is today the world is functioning online. We all are on Zoom calls. This particular event is happening on an online platform and all of this. So I think it's two things are important. One is the student interest to collaborate with these potential industries, with these potential research groups. And second thing is tie-ups and memorandum of understanding between the university where we want to establish a research and and SRM. So once these things are established, and then we kind of have those talented pool of candidates with all the prerequisite skills necessary to contribute to the research outputs, of a particular research group. That's why I keep telling, like, prerequisite knowledge, gaining this up until the third year is very crucial. Once this has been established, then potential collaborations could be worked out by the Office of International Relations and the university to have like remote project collaborations between the students, between these universities, between the professors in these universities, and a particular learning culture could be established even through the online platform. I see there's a question in the chat which talks about something similar to Tesla. Well, about that, such collaborations are difficult to establish with the industry, specifically because industry data and all of these things are subject to a lot of compliances, a lot of security, and a lot of restrictions. So unless there is an official contract signed by an individual to work for their company, one will not have access to proprietary data, and any um, you know um, leak of such confidential information knowingly or unknowingly in this scenario could lead to a heavy lawsuit for an individual back here in the United States.
Thank you. Thank you, Vignesh, for your patience to answer my questions and the questions posted in the comment. Thank you for joining us with such a wonderful talk in a wonderful event. Thank you once again. We hope we meet in some other event. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Vignesh.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. Hope you all have a
Thank you.
great day. Yeah, thanks.